we've got the Convention of States here, or will. A gentleman by the name of Paul Hodson's here, and you think, well, what does Convention of States have to do with property tax? And regardless of where you may have been on the Convention of States issue itself, they have an extraordinarily well-organized, well-oiled grassroots organization throughout the state. And now that they have passed the Convention of States legislation, they are not packing up their balls and going home. They have offered to help us initially with property tax and perhaps with other legislative priorities as well. So that, I'm not going to try to steal any of Paul's thunder, but it's a very good organization that will be of huge benefit to us. And then last, on religious freedom and privacy, we've got Texas Values, and they're probably one of the premier, if not the premier organization that looks after that particular type of issue. And so I'm just honored and privileged that we could get all 5 of these groups represented here in one meeting. So anyway, with that, let's, Terry has agreed to open us in prayer, so if everybody will stand for prayer.
Father, I thank you for this group that you brought here today. I ask that we all keep you as the #1 priority in our lives. We ask your blessings upon this group and all that we do, that you bless this weekend, and that you return us all home safely. In Jesus' name, amen.
Tanya, can you call pledges? I've actually taken off. I think everybody's done the pledge at least once today, and we'll do it again tomorrow. I don't think our allegiance to either flag is in question, just to save us time. Tanya, can you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mark Ramsey.
Here.
Terry Holcomb. Okay.
Oh, is he?
Me, Walter West. Terry Leo. Here. Chuck Branch. Warren Norris. Debbie Terry. Here. Roy Morales.
Present.
Gail Stannart. Here. Susan Fountain. Here. Robert.
Here.
Macias. I'm going to get that right one day.
Pretty close.
Thank you, sir. Hannah Scott. Here. Terry Harper.
Here.
Ashley Sellers. Here. Summer Wise. Mark DeRazio.
Here.
James Zavaleta.
Over here, yes.
Did I do that right?
Zavaleta.
Zavaleta. Thank you. Tom Roller.
Here.
And James Dickey and Alma Jackson. Okay. You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And without further ado, we'll go into this storyboarding session. Mark DeRazio actually was the originator of us doing this as a way of informing everybody what we're facing in the next 5-6 months. Perhaps after that, if we go to a special session. And he will give you a brief introduction, and then the plan is, since we're in this kind of lecture style room, that the members will then physically walk down here, and he'll kind of give you instructions from that point on. So, Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to address everybody of something that we do in our company, which is storyboarding. Now, I'm in construction, and construction is the world's largest team sport, because we're dealing with so many people in the world. This system of organizing and being able to see where you are actually originated in Hollywood. Hollywood, whenever you're on a movie set, it costs about $65,000 an hour, and so they needed to be able to track it and make sure that they continue on through with their set to save as much money as they can. So we incorporated that into our construction company, and we've had very, very good success. When you plan the work and you work the plan, we were able to save about 25% in labor costs, which is significant. So especially when you're dealing with large contracts, that goes right to your bottom line. So, if we can learn the storyboard on this legislative session, one will be more comfortable because we know what we're gonna do, we can see what's planned ahead, and we know we can anticipate the problems and work out the solutions ahead of time. Two, I'm nervous about the legislative session because I'm walking into some stuff, even though I was on the committee last time. Things move and they change and they're so fluid, but you can control that. You can control it to a certain extent and be flexible in everything you do. So to get started, storyboarding is a 4-step. I had asked Rachel Malone, I went to her seminar yesterday on the legislature. And so she laid out the different areas of what we need to work on. And that was a lot better than what I was going to present. So I asked her if she would be so kind as to, she's going to help us do this. So there's 4 areas that we look at. The first area is we identify the major headings. And so on this sticky note, right here, we're going to identify all the major headings. And how many have you identified?
8.
Okay, she has identified 8 major headings.
That's all.
Well, then what we're going to do is we're going to pick each major heading. The committee members are going to write this down, and then we're going to take that major heading, and it's going to go across the board, across the top. That's the major. That's the entire overview of the project. The second thing that comes under those major headings is what needs to be done. And that's where it builds the entire storyboard. And then after we identify what needs to be done, the third thing is we identify what tasks need to be done. All right? What tasks need to be done. And this is where, you have to, you start getting down into the weeds of it, into the nitty-gritty. And then after we identify what task needs to be done, then we identify who needs to do it. And the individual who needs to do it, then everything is set to a time frame. And then once it's set to a time frame, then you're more comfortable, you know what's expected of you. Everybody else around is you're comfortable because you're confident in what you're doing. And you know what, we can get a whole lot done in this legislative session. So, I think, can we have the, okay, we need the committee to come down front. And we're going to pass out these sticky notes. We got about, what, 30 minutes? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do this as quickly as we can. Okay. Just, you're going to sit along here.
Is that okay back here, Mark? Or we need to be close?
No, come on up here, down in the well area. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And by the way, let me add this. I don't want it to turn into a free-for-all kind of thing, but especially the SREC members, but even other observers in the room, if you have particular legislative experience and insights, feel free to help jump in some of these conversations.
You mean all of us?
Yes.
Not the storyboarding committee?
No, everybody.
No, we are the storyboarding.
Not
on
everybody
camera
that's
right here.
observing,
Just let you
but,
know.
everybody else.
Oh, you're off of it. It's just her.
Yeah, we are,
No,
we
you're
are
good.
the
I wanna see you
storyboard
guys.
committee.
But with your camera, it's the same.
Thank you.
Okay, how many more? 3? You got yours. Okay.
All right. We've got a clock that's counting down up in the front. I don't know if you can see it in the back, but we do have a clock, and we're going to try to stick to that. So.
Pen, I'm supposed to have a pen too?
Yes.
I don't know. What
Maybe someone starts just talking.
Gail, you need a Sharpie.
I was answering questions concerning legislative priorities. Oh, I did not.
Thank you.
You got a yellow? Yes, I did. Celebrate that. Celebrate the health and all. For so long, I forgot. Like they share the burden on stuff. It's nice. Green. Everybody's pink too, right?
You ready, Rachel?
Yes.
I got green.
Oh, supposed to have 4 colors?
Yes.
I only had 2. Thank you, Miss Green. Oh, yes.
You need green?
You can always borrow if we need it.
Did I take a
You got green?
You're supposed to have a green.
I got extra.
4 colors. I had 5.
I hope somebody's getting a picture of it.
I'm Ashley.
Okay, on the, what we had chosen was blue is gonna be for the major headings. So, Rachel, so we have this down, have somebody write it down, stick it up on the board.
Okay, so major headings, I'm gonna suggest we actually do a double layer because of what's coming next. So, the major headings is the major process section. So, to get a bill to pass in the legislature, you've got your committees, you've got filing, and then committees, and then floor, and then governor. So I'm gonna suggest we do a double layer, because for the filing and committees and floor, you have to go through each of those in the House and in the Senate. And you can do one first then the other, or simultaneously, so there's not a set order, one and the other. So I'm gonna suggest we do, like, House filing, Senate filing. House committees, Senate committees. Let's add another one for House calendars, because I think that's its own heading. And then House floor, Senate floor, and then governor. Does that work for everybody?
But on the Senate side, don't you have the two that's kind of like the,
You
that
can put
decides the calendar?
Exactly. You can put that as its own heading as well if you like.
Okay.
Or under
Okay, just
the
one quick
calendars
thing.
on the
Yeah.
Senate
We're doing
side.
something
Yeah,
else.
that
Things
they
are a little
actually
bit different
control
here.
what's
We
Right.
on the
drive
floor.
the writing of the legislation too, and that comes before filing.
I lump that in with filing because it's part of the drafting process. But however y'all want to do
Yeah,
it.
let's separate that.
Okay, drafting.
Because that's,
Drafting?
yeah.
Okay. Another category for drafting.
Okay, so who's writing these?
There's a first major category, is it filings?
Well,
Filings.
drafting.
Drafting.
Drafting's first.
Okay, okay, something.
Is that a different
Yeah, I'm
color?
ready. I'm ready.
Okay, we need the next category, somebody write, what's the second?
Filings.
Then
So,
filing.
so we've got draftings and filings and then committees.
We need to specify if they're House or Senate. Right? We'll just write that underneath.
Well, no, we need 2 lines.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
so
put
say
the top line.
somebody else grab a, yeah, so specify
We
House
gotta, I
on
guess
one.
we just do the whole major headings first. So that means that, look, major headings go across the board.
Yeah, okay, so draftings, House, Senate, filings, House and Senate, and then we've got committees, somebody have committees? House committees and Senate committees?
Here's filing, here's filing.
Cool, then we just specify those. Who has committees? House committees, maybe Senate committees?
Yeah, I'm,
Just one,
Committees?
what do you have,
I need a
Senate
Senate
committee?
committee, anybody have a Senate committee?
What color?
Blue. Blue, we're still on the major headings.
Okay, do you want me to do lieutenant governor?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, yes, yes, we all do.
Yeah, good point.
Yep. All right, so I need a Senate committees, who has the Senate committees?
You get a picture of that.
Right down Senate committee. Okay, it's coming from.
Okay, and then
Calendar.
we need, yes, calendars, house calendars.
House calendar.
Yep. House calendars.
Oh, that's house. Here's house calendar. Yep. Here's house calendar. House calendar.
Calendars like here.
House calendar. I didn't have a Sharpie and I was too short.
You get a little step right there.
Gail,
A whole bench for you.
wait till we get to the
So
yellow and
house
pink.
floor, Senate floor.
Who's governor?
House
This
floor.
man.
What else do we need? We can share. What else do you need?
House floor, okay, I need Senate floor.
Senate, I got it.
Okay, and then I think we got everything.
You need Senate for it.
I got it.
Okay.
Once I get it cooking.
Hey, still works.
No idea what's going on there. I have no
We're
idea.
creating a storyboard.
Okay, this is.
Is there a light?
Do we
Turn on
need
the
a section if we go
top.
into special?
There is. I don't think anyone else can
Not
see.
yet, that's good.
And the second
I
row
mean-
is Senate headings. The process
Okay, so
of
let me just talk
the
through this real quick.
legislation.
So in order for a bill to pass, it
Oh,
has
over
to
here.
pass the
Wait a minute, I
House,
got it.
it has to pass the Senate, and it has to go to the governor. We're in brief, and there are multiple clauses to add to those. So House and Senate, it can start in the House and then go to the Senate, or it can start in the Senate and then go to the House, or it can go through both simultaneously. That's why we can't specify that it starts in the House or the Senate. So that's why I put up the double layer. So we could start with this row, or start with this row, or both of them simultaneously. But either way, it's basically the same process in each chamber with certain minor differences that are important later on. So you got the drafting of the bill. That is happening now, has been happening for quite a while. Filing started the Monday after elections, and it goes until March 8th, so it's happening now. And then the committee process is the next thing. So it gets assigned to a committee, goes through a committee hearing process. Then it has to get scheduled, assuming it makes it through there, it has to get scheduled for the floor vote, and that's what the calendars process or the lieutenant governor scheduling process is for. Then it goes to the House floor for what's called second reading, where they do all the amendments, and the third reading. And then it will have passed both and goes to the governor's office. There could be another step in here, and actually, I would suggest add conference committee. Because if different wordings are passed in the House and the Senate, then you gotta have your conference committee to hash out the wordings.
And each side has
So,
one.
I would suggest that. Does
Now,
that help?
Mark.
Yes.
How would you suggest we put things like committee substitutes and all that part as one of the items under the committee process?
That's
Yeah, these are the major headings, and now all of the, starting here with the drafting, that we will pick a senator or a legislator, and we would put their name under them, we have the bill. Then under them, the next step would go, whatever the next step is. And then once it's drafted, then you go to the next, category. And then once you complete those tasks, then the bill automatically goes to where it goes to. So,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mark, weren't you alluding to in the drafting part that we need to identify who's gonna do that
Yes.
work? For this, whatever the 5 priorities or specific things we wanna target, and then we're gonna do it for the
Correct.
House and Senate, but to go to what you're driving at, we need to identify who that is.
But I think what we need to do is just put, instead of getting specific, just write legislator, and then put bill.
Okay.
Something.
And we can fill in the names offline.
You can fill it,
later
yes.
on. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, next,
Cool. Okay, so that's the blues. What comes next after the blues?
yellow.
Which is
The
tasks or the?
actually, the second one is, we're identifying the tasks that need to be done under each of these categories. So just pick one category first and assign the task, we'll put it on there, and we'll follow it.
So we need, multiple yellows underneath each one, right?
Oh, yeah, there could be 20, there could be 30.
Okay,
there could be
so
two.
this is where the specifics come in. So I think, Mark wants us to put all the yellows for, like, write down whatever tasks you think need to go inside of drafting. And then those will go under here. So or,
that?
yeah, or under each of those. So various tasks.
Is this what needs to be done?
So I would
Yes,
say-
these are the
Yes.
things to be
Yes.
done.
During step
Yes.
To
two.
get it through each step. So,
I
you
know,
know,
I thought the
do you want me to go through and give some suggestions? for
Yeah.
Oh,
steps?
absolutely.
Okay.
We wanna-
All right, so, and I would say y'all go ahead and just write some of these down, or write down your own ideas. You're gonna have ideas I don't come up with. Let's go ahead and start sticking them up there. So under draftings, talking with all the stakeholders, talking with all the organizations who are interested in working on the same issue. See who's working on what, right?
What do they call
Stakeholders or other organizations.
it? Okay, what,
I got it.
Sorry.
coalitions?
Coalitions, yeah,
Okay.
talking with coalitions to see who's working on what. I know Young Republicans are working on several of them, other organizations as well. Talking with looking up to see what has already been filed. So if you already have a bill filed that already meets all of your requirements, there's no need to go redraft something. So, that would be something important to do. See what's already filed. I analyze those bills.
Just put, the bills that are already filed, put, how would you call that?
I'll be
Analyze,
Existing filings,
yeah,
You go to Joshua?
monitor them.
monitor will come down.
Over here.
No, under the other two, there we go, right.
This one? Or this one?
Identify those already filed.
That would be
I'm having
filing.
trouble separating drafting and filing, so I'm not quite sure.
This is by then, you can see it online though, and here you can't.
So,
What's the
Correct.
percentage of those?
Right. Right, right.
We can influence.
we won't know what's been drafted and never filed.
Okay, we've got talking with stakeholders, but we really need to identify those stakeholders.
Okay, then what you do, if you see that, take that, and move it out, put that up there. And then,
So
this is the beauty of it. If you don't like it, you
officially
change
and
it.
ledge council are legislators.
Okay, I get that.
We do the same thing in the military.
What percent?
We've already established in the
Literally
past.
no idea.
You don't know, okay.
Like, cause they never say, oh, I drafted the list. Yes, I would say suggesting language, would come under drafting process, talking with legislators who are interested in the issues. Yep, identifying authors and co-authors, I like that. To me, the most important, time to rally people is gonna be the committees. So I would suggest a lot of, I would suggest a lot of focus on getting the word out, yeah, give
What
notice
is
to the
your
public.
saying?
Exactly what you
Give
said.
notice to the public.
Give notice to
action
the
items.
public about hearings, coming up, and organize
We
testimony.
got a separate one? Or
Part of the committee process, as soon as they're assigned to the committee, is start talking to that committee chair. Have major meetings with the committee chair about when are you gonna have the hearings. If you develop a really good relationship with the committee chair, they will often give you a couple weeks' notice for the major hearings. And that is a whole lot better than 3 days' notice. And all that is relationship.
Interject something right there. As we identify committees, and by the way, I put a sticky note under the writing portion, the drafting portion, to try, if you can, when you're talking to your legislators and their chiefs and their legislative directors, try, if you can, when they put a bill request in on these 5 priorities, and it could be multiple bills on some of the priorities, try to get your name put on as a legislative council contact. And that way, there are always questions that come up in the drafting. They can call you directly at that point.
So
And
that needs to go on the board.
yeah, well, I said work with legislative council down on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing on the committees themselves, as soon as we know where a bill is headed, we really start focusing on those committee members. And you may have the best representative in the world, but if they're not on that committee, you really need to have them helping, but you need to be focusing on that committee. And I would include the committee coordinator,
Yes.
not just the actually elected chair, the committee coordinator on that.
Yeah, those relationships can be so great for getting a lot more information, having a good working relationship. I found they like to work with us. If we're gonna group people in, they wanna know and they wanna help with information. It's useful to develop those.
Do you have to identify, Mark, which ones are the experts, so that needs to go up there as well, like
For the invited testimony?
Yeah.
What I would do as soon as you know who your committee is, make that part of the conversation with your committee chairman, with the staff of the committee chairman, say, hey, we would like to bring somebody from the Legislative Priorities Committee as expert testimony.
Do they
Or we
have
can
to,
suggest-
like, pre-register anything to be an
The
expert?
committee chair has to invite them.
Okay,
That's
But-
literally all.
but how do you define experts? Like, does the committee chair say you are an
It's
expert?
whoever the committee chair could be like, I like this
Who they
person
pick
because
as
she
an
has a cute
expert.
shirt, she can come and testify.
Our invited testimony could
This
be
is not in
anybody.
order, but-
Yeah, I know that,
but
but
we can
you
reorder it.
wanna
But-
also work with your
Yeah,
experts.
if I could make a quick comment on that particular issue. What we're facing, the invited testimony, you typically will get 10 minutes to testify as an invited testifier, and then ask lots of questions by whatever the committee is, okay? That's compared to 3 minutes, sometimes only 2 minutes, for public testimony and probably less questions. You could have a lot of questions in that case too, but it kind of depends on the issue and how well you know the chair and those sorts of things.
So it would be advantageous for us as SREC members to be expert.
Very
Yes.
much so.
Yes.
And I would submit, and this was actually the way I convinced a senator just last week to invite me to one of his committees, was that we are the expert in representing the people that actually voted for the priorities and voted in the primary and general elections. And that alone, even if you're not necessarily an in-the-weeds expert on a particular technical issue, you are representing the party. And be absolutely bold about this. That is what you will be there doing, because there are lobbyists that are going to be working completely against us. And we saw that in a property tax hearing just this week. And so we are representing the party, and that's your expertise, is what the people want. Okay.
So when I was working for the party on ledge stuff last year, during special session or the interim hearings, whenever there was one relating to anything in the party platform, I reached out to the committee chair's office and I said, this is in our priorities, this is in our platform, could we please be invited to testimony? And we sent a letter from the chairman. And sometimes they didn't answer, sometimes they said no, but sometimes they said yes. And then either the chairman would go, or he would assign somebody else to represent the party, which he's been very good about that. Any of the SRAC members who want to represent the party's position, he lets you testify representing the party. And so if it's, we would kind of try to find somebody who's, like our chaplain testified on the religious liberties one, or find somebody whose expertise or interests kind of match that. But as a ledge priorities member, like your expertise and your interest in that does match.
Okay,
So that's how we did that.
Okay, let's go ahead to the next heading and just start filling that one down so that they understand.
Calendars is rough. The way the current rules work is that any member of the calendars committee on the House committee can anonymously tag a bill and it dies and nobody really knows who it is. So basically, as soon as we know who that committee is, even before the bill is moved over here, start working with the calendars chairman, start working with Lieutenant Governor's office, working with the Speaker's office.
Okay. How would you define that? What kind of a task?
Meetings.
How would you define that task?
I would say meetings with
Calendars committee.
meetings with calendars committee chair and members.
Okay, let's go ahead.
So
Meetings
does
with
that
House
mean,
and Senate
does that
leadership.
mean that, each one of us is trying to do that, or the working group heads are gonna do that, or we're supposed to identify someone on our committee, our individual working group?
I think you decide that in your working groups.
Okay.
It's gonna take a whole lot of people.
Yeah, I'd say the group of people or
Yeah.
multiple meetings.
I'm
is
only
not
gonna
bad.
take so many appointments from my committee.
A meeting is one thing, calls are another.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I would say your working group can set up some meetings and work on that, but also put out the word to the public for phone calls. So they know, hey, people that are watching this.
Okay, let's
Sure,
put-
have you
put
done
all
that
their phone
before?
calls.
Phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
You just make a phone call to,
So grassroots,
Okay.
yeah, activist alerts or
I did
action
that
alerts,
last
phone
session.
calls.
Are you running out of paper?
Memorial.
Okay, go ahead. and
Yeah, we're still on
phone calls.
mailing.
Okay, then what would the next
Mark.
task be?
Cool, we got phone
Mark.
calls.
Will we, as a committee, be trying to help with any rule changes?
and
I
on
know,
that
like,
phone calls,
last
Rachel,
session, the only reason I asked is last session.
there's probably gonna
State
be a
Board tried to put
slash
through
going
that
that way just for thinking, is
People
this
could
gonna be a
register their
stat
opinion within
action?
their district, they can go to the district office, instead of having to drive down to Austin.
Okay, there's two issues, not explicitly on this storyboard. We're probably not gonna have time to do it today, but we should consider this, is that there are potentially rule changes that could help us, particularly on the transparency side, particularly on the side of being able to force bills out of a sticky calendars committee, for example. We should certainly be prepared to jump in on that. I don't think that goes on this storyboard here. There's another one, and that is when it comes to the budget. I think I mentioned this once in a meeting before, is that the budget kind of has special rules associated how it gets debated. One of the things we can do with the budget is we can propose that there are what are called budget riders. And these riders have some specific rules. They can't actually change policy or change law, but they can affect the way that law is enacted through the power of the purse. And when we get to the budget debate, I'll try to fill you in on more of that, but that's another thing that we need to be prepared to jump in on. and really brainstorm on how you could affect the spending and in effect promote party values by affecting the spending. Completely doable.
Where,
we-
we can put that on the storyboard, but we need to know where in the process is that?
So that happens anywhere over here, basically, like January 8th. Well, January 8th is when they elect a speaker, and then right after that, maybe that day or the next day, is when they talk about rules.
The next day?
So in here.
Yeah, rules will be actually way up here, and the budget would actually be right about here. Yeah.
Can I ask right here, when it's in the calendar section here, and we know it's not going our way, can we go back to these stakeholders like we voted and start calling the district?
I put it up there.
That's something
Joy.
Yeah,
Right here.
That's okay.
I did it.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, every step along the way, once you know what the choke point is, that's when I would suggest putting out, so 2 things. I would suggest your working group has at least weekly calls with bill authors or committee chairs or whoever the people in the ledge are, the members who are kind of working on this or responsible for it. And then if you sense that it's not moving along the way you want it to, put out action alerts and get a bunch of people to make phone calls for any step along the way. For any step where you feel like you need more grassroots support. The action alerts could be on any single step where you
That was working group,
So could
weekly
we,
calls to, bill authors,
I'm sorry.
weekly calls to bill authors, is that what?
Well, if they've authored, so your working group should be calling the authors. Yes, calling bill authors and committee chairs just for checkups. Hey, how's this bill coming? What can we do? Why is it not scheduled yet?
Let's go on to the next one. Remember, we're looking for tasks.
Okay.
And what's happening is we're taking everybody through the whole process, and we have to identify the tasks.
Yes. So tasks for the floor.
Just give us
First,
the tasks.
okay, so tasks, prepare amendments. So if you don't have a perfect bill and you want it to be amended to be fixed, then prepare those amendments. If you know, so prepare amendments is one.
Okay, so let's go prepare amendment, that's what we need.
Okay.
We're up to speed here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. What else? Other people?
Show up.
Show up. Show up. Action alert phone calls or emails or whatever you do for people to show up or people to call their reps.
Show up, call rep, prepare amendment.
so that's about all you can do
on the floor.
This could also be another one over here.
For every single step.
Yeah.
Yep, for every single
Let's
step.
go.
And the whole time that you're doing all of these along the way is continue to try to get more co-authors to sign on to the bill.
Yes, that's huge.
The whole while you're working that edge.
That is huge.
What you feel like? Prepare minutes.
Show up action alerts.
Set,
Alerts.
set.
Okay, next thing.
Hey, Chuck.
That's it on the floor. Once it's on the floor, you're very limited.
Action,
Yeah,
what,
at that
is
point
that on the floor, action
You're
alerts?
very, well, you want people there ahead of time, but you're very limited to this.
At that point, it's kind of up to your champion.
Yeah, you're done.
Like,
You're done, except being in text contact with your rep.
get your people to make the phone calls and
So
emails
what's
to
it,
their
what's
reps.
it called?
That's it. You got it right there.
Right there.
That's our work.
That's it.
I think so.
One thing you can do, if you see a bad bill that's coming forward that looks like it might be passing, you might rack your brain if you know a little bit about the House rules and figure out how they might call a point of order on it.
Yeah.
And that's a tried and true way of getting a bad bill killed.
So you want parliamentary procedure?
Yeah.
Okay, just put maneuvering parliamentary procedure.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, you'll have reps that are doing
As far as conference committee,
We don't need to do
if it makes it to that point,
No, but we
it's
get-
calling the people, calling the members of that committee, having meetings with them,
Okay, what's the
calling,
first thing we need? Conference committee, then what happens?
call members.
Call members?
That's it. Call members.
Don't you have to go by and visit with them?
Yes, I mean, depending on how the phone calls go. You can also, meet with leadership, House leadership.
Staff.
That can help.
One thing on that point, Mark, and maybe you can put this into words a little clearer. When you're calling on members, try to actually get face-to-face time with that member. That is very difficult to do, okay? Always leave a handout with the office. Do not simply sign the guest book and tell the office manager or secretary that you came by and please get this to the member. If you do that, I can guarantee you it will never get to the member. There's so much stuff. At the end of the last session, I had a stack about this hall that I had not yet gone through of things that were dropped off like that. What you need to do is make sure you talk to either the chief of staff or a legislative director, if not the member themselves. Okay, anything under those levels is probably wasting your time. You'd be better off to go find one of those in another office. Okay?
Chief of staff or who else?
Or legislative directors. Not legislative assistants, not anything like that, legislative directors.
Yeah.
Well,
So governor's
and
office,
Rachel?
something you
I'm
can do
talking
is
general
meet with
terms.
the governor's office starting now and say, hey, here are our priorities, here are 5 priorities. Can we work with you on this? Will you sign this? Having those conversations now is useful. If there becomes any issue when you actually get there, then you can do action alerts. So the 3 things I would say you can do any step along the way, meet with whatever your bill authors. That should be a how can I help you? What's going on, how can I help you? Call or meet with the committee chairs and or their staff, and that should be a, hey, is this moving? What's happening next? When are you scheduling it for a committee? When are you scheduling it for a vote? And then any step along the way you can set out an action alert, a stat action alert. If you're like, something's not moving, or these people need more support, or the legislators need to be thanked for moving it along. All of those would be good for stat alerts.
All this that we're doing, are we targeting the Republican legislators, or do we also target the Democrats?
That's up to y'all.
That'll be by bill. That'll be based on bill and issue. I can tell you on any gun bill, we have Democrats that we know to go to, and we absolutely do that.
My state senator is a Democrat. She is pretty middle of the road conservative.
Yeah, no, yes, but that'll be based on each bill and each situation.
Okay, just what's that?
Rachel?
Yes.
Mark, I'm going back to my kind of original thing. Do we declare ourselves expert testifiers? Do we have to have the chairman do that of a committee?
The chairman.
So you go to the
in
chairman,
the
you have
bylaws-
expertise in this area, and
Yes.
No,
then
all it is in the
you sign
bylaws,
up.
the state chair has the authority to be the spokesman for the party, or he can designate somebody.
Right.
So all he has to do is say, I'm designating you to speak for the party.
And,
Okay.
and does.
it does, okay.
Sorry.
I mean, Terry has done
We
that.
have,
Yeah.
I
I've
have
done that.
seen where, the potential speaker of the House has said he's in favor of the, Republican legislative priority. So shouldn't we be also working with him?
100%. I think we have that in there. It's not.
Okay,
let's go ahead and put that in like early. Visit with Senate leadership. Visit with House
I'm
leadership.
out of yellow.
Yeah, they got it.
But I would say
Mark's got yellow.
There's
Oh,
yellow.
Mark's got yellow.
But we have
I think we're
Well, one thing, I put one up there on the conference committee. That's really good that y'all added
Okay,
that
wait a
blue
minute,
one
we're
there.
adding more.
And what I put on there is changes, okay? It is not required that what comes out of that conference committee is actually even that close to what goes into that conference committee. And there's a lot of last minute changes to legislation that occur actually as part of that conference committee. So if we don't necessarily get the bills we like and perfect wording coming out and going into conference, it's not over yet. So in fact, even if we do get that language, we need to be vigilant and make sure it doesn't get taken out in conference
Right,
committee.
I've had bills that I drafted, filed, got co-authors, worked the whole thing, and it totally changed the wording,
Yeah.
and I had to end up killing my
Right,
own.
exactly.
bill.
Exactly,
Now,
exactly, and that does happen.
Our priorities would not end up in any local consent.
Highly unlikely.
Okay.
Highly unlikely. Yeah.
But
Highly unlikely. It only takes 10 signatures to bring it up. Highly unlikely. It can be a local issue. The question is, and this goes to which committee does something get assigned to? The question is, there's 2 routes. It can go to what's called local and consent. It can go to what's called the regular calendars. And local and consent is intended to be things that are non-controversial. They tend to be, well, local and consent. The local bills, which might only affect Nueces County or something like that, that might be an example, assuming all the Nueces County reps were on board with it. The other is things that are pretty much non-controversial. And essentially, they've got the votes to roll it through the House, even if it's not unanimous. It goes through the local and consent calendar. If a particular rep objects to it, they can still object to it. And so they're on record as not voting for this thing that they didn't like. But typically, it's a unanimous or nearly unanimous vote when it goes through the local and consent side of things. As Debbie pointed out, I seriously doubt any of our issues are going to be on the local and consent calendar. And even if they got routed that way, it only takes, I think if I remember my House rules, I think it only takes 10 signatures to pull it off a local and consent. So, 10 Democrats might object to one of our priorities and it's off a local and consent. And that would actually set us back, because now you're going back to the calendars committee again, and so you're
one of our bills are going to hit local and consent.
Yeah, right.
But the other point of it, though, is if that's happening over the House, then you work the Senate.
Yeah, yeah, great point.
Trying to get out of the Senate, then to go to the House, if
Right.
you're going to be killed in the House.
Great point.
Pardon me.
All right.
What's left?
Well, we're
Oh, well, actually, I built in a little extra.
I think that's got it pretty well
We can
covered,
probably
actually.
go about 5 minutes if
I
we
think
get
that's
to.
got it pretty well covered, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, so we'll.
Are we gonna put this in a chart online for us?
We will, we will.
A flow chart?
Where's
We'll get on it right now.
where's Laura? Laura, did you hear that request? To get this actually in a usable format that we can share amongst the members and ultimately probably go online.
I can send you the picture, Laura.
Yeah, we'll get some good
Can I
pictures.
post the little flowchart things on Facebook or no? Because it's just things that both sides are already gonna know.
No, this is not good. This is an education, I think.
I'll have a chair around here somewhere.
And the other thing is if the other side. Okay.
But I'll figure it out later.
Okay. Okay, well, can we give Mark and Rachel a big hand? Yeah, I think this was very useful. We'll obviously come up with additional things we'll add to this over time, particularly out toward the end of the calendar. One thing is that, we're focused on these first couple of columns right now. I think it was Rachel mentioned, I believe it was a March 8th deadline. Was that last year or is that this year? That's this year. And so once you get to that March 8th deadline, the first couple of phases are over, whether we got there or not. And then you're only focusing on what's after that. There are other similar deadlines. We call that the filing deadline. There are other similar deadlines because every bill has to be heard and voted on 3 times in the House. Now, the Senate routinely suspends rules, and it's not a big issue on the Senate side. The House does not routinely do that, at least they haven't in recent past. And so there's constitutional deadlines as to when bills have to reach certain thresholds. And so you have to back that up when you start looking at this first and second and third reading requirements. So there's other deadlines spread throughout the thing as well. Anyway, thanks to Rachel and Mark. Okay, next I've got, if I check my revised one, yes, I had a note that for the members that are not already on Signal text messaging, if you haven't tried loading that, it's a free app. I don't think there's any charges for it. Maybe there's a premium version. I don't think I've ever even seen the premium version if there is. It's called Signal.
Oh.
Signal. And the reason for this is a little bit twofold. One, it is when you're doing cross-platform texting between, say, Android and Apple, it's more secure than just ordinary text messaging. The apple to apple is fine, but when you start crossing platforms, it's not quite as robust on the security side. And the other thing, this is a more important reason, is that Signal will handle larger text messaging groups, where Apple in particular has a problem sending to groups larger than, I think it's 10, if you have Android people on that particular group, if I remember how they do that. So Signal doesn't appear to have those limitations, at least I haven't seen it yet. So all the members that are not already on Signal, please get it ASAP.
To whom do we go to actually get the permissions?
Just send me a note and we'll invite you into the group. There's already probably, I don't know, 12 of us on the group right now, something like that. So just send me a note, and in fact, you should have gotten an invite from me that if you haven't read that yet, that should notify me once you're on there. Okay, next, Tanya and Debbie. I want you to describe this legislative tracking app that they have come across that just sounds wonderful to me. And I'm not looking for a PowerPoint dog and pony show, but just tell us a little bit about what it can do.
Do you have a handout, Tanya? I don't have enough for everybody. But I will send it electronically if everybody's interested in it. I'm gonna let Debbie introduce it. She's the one that turns on to it.
I'm the state director for the Texas Legislative Prayer Caucus, which is under the Texas Legislative Prayer Caucus is under the purview of the Congressional Prayer Caucus in D.C. And the gal who heads up coordinating, we have about almost 40 states that are involved. She is able to get information to me quicker than all of our efforts last year working on legislative priorities, tracking bills to the TLO, which is really robust and great. But we did a lot of cut and paste, and I mean, mega hours, Terry's here, I mean, lots of work on legislative priorities, just trying to see every movement of the bill. Well, she sends me out every week a list of everything at the congressional level that is moving regarding religious liberties. And I'm going, how is she doing this? And so when I found out about this app, it's called Track Bill. And so I signed up for a demo, and I looped Tanya into it. And she's in Houston, I'm in North Texas, and we could, just both of us have our mouths hanging open at the amount of time it would have saved Rachel and everybody on this committee, because she just put in keywords and it populates in real time when bills are filed, when bills are moved, when languages change. Absolutely extraordinary. And while we were on this thing talking to him, we said, well, just type in religious liberties, and we gave him some words. I said, use the words they use with the Congressional Prayer Caucus. And so he immediately pulled up a report. We got this, he put the RPT template on the top of it, religious liberty report, and showed it to us. And Tanya and I are going, oh my goodness! Because not only are they quickly tracking these bills in this area, they're also able to give us what the opposition is doing on everything we don't want to happen dealing with our priorities. Well, we didn't have time to do that last year, did we, Terry? We were so busy trying to focus on what we wanted to move, we weren't thinking about what the other side is pushing. So they're even able to put out what we're monitoring, what we're supporting, and what we are opposing, and give it all the links for social media that we can take, put on the website. All of us can put on our website in real time this stuff is happening. And so it's something worth looking at, in our opinion.
Well, and two
Go
other,
ahead and tell the rest of the things
two
that
other
you said.
major points, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, if she's still in here. Their mobile app gives real-time notifications also, which the TLO does not. When you set notifications, you get it via email, not text message or through the app. This gives you real-time, and you can do everything through that app. Set your notifications, find the bills, set them to track, whatever. You can do everything through that app. our stat page or our legislative priority page on our website, they can set up a box that has scrolling, it's real-time updates about any bills that we're tracking, just scrolling. A live feed of the bills that would, and the changes being made.
What's the cost?
$2,000 a year.
And that's for unlimited users then?
No, that is, the mobile app is unlimited.
Okay.
But the website, actually, the people that would be going in and setting, finding the bills and whatnot, administrative, like we were talking about earlier, is three people. But, I mean, if a few of us have the login information,
Right.
by flow.
Well, he did say that, he said, I know I'm costing myself money by saying this, but you could also set up a legislative priorities at Gmail and give everybody access to it that's on the
Right.
committee.
Right.
So,
Oh, and he actually mentioned doing it that way?
he did.
Okay.
And the mobile app is unlimited users.
Okay.
Like, there's no.
Now, when you say it gets notices, do you get notices of, say, a committee posting where it's got a hearing
Yes.
notice?
Yeah, if you set that in your alerts, you get it within 5 to 13 minutes of it being posted in your state.
Really?
Yep. So, and he wants to, anybody that's, if we're interested in that, he wants to set up another conference
You
call
do it,
if we're
Jen.
interested.
Okay, and y'all got all the contact information and everything, okay. Since this would be something we obviously could use before our next SREC meeting, and I didn't discuss this with Debbie or Tanya, either one, but it would be appropriate for there to be a motion, something along the lines of that we recommend to the chair and staff working with the Legislative Priority Committee to further investigate and fund this application if it was deemed suitable. Because this needs to take place before next March.
I'll present that motion.
Okay? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Restate the motion, please.
We recommend that the chair and staff, working with the Legislative Priority Committee, further investigate and fund this application if it's found suitable. I don't have it typed in or anything.
Still trying to,
Discussion?
you want to put the name in it?
Yeah, any more discussion?
How does this app get populated with all this information that's going on?
That's their secret, that's why they're
That's
selling
what
it.
that's what they, okay, they do it, the contract.
Right,
Okay,
they do.
that's very cheap then.
That's what we got for the information and the convenience of just, I mean, to create this report that Debbie showed, it took him like 2 seconds. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Terry?
I see our senior member here, kind of pondering. Do you have concerns, Terry?
Well, I'm just really, with the bills that we are gonna be following, we are going to know when something is. We're gonna know. I don't need an app to tell me that, I don't need.
But the religious liberties legislation that we followed during the special session or right before the special session was like a full-time job to create a report that he did in a couple of seconds. I mean, it was the work involved was ridiculous. Did you copying and pasting and hyperlinking and we're thinking about stat too, the stat reports, to activate the grassroots to get into Austin. It's just the information very quickly. Very quick information.
Did you feel, Terry, working past sessions? I mean, I know sometimes, a bill all of a sudden gets put in committee, like,
Well, the biggest
split,
problem.
and then you're like, okay, I got 2.5 hours to get there, and starting, did you feel
No, that
like?
wasn't the issue. I
For
mean,
the
I know
most
what they're
part.
talking about. The religious liberty one is the one.
It's the one, yeah.
It's the one because so many bills get filed pro,
Right.
con, it's a train wreck to try and keep up with. That is very hard to manage on the religious liberty one.
I'm
because
chairing that,
That's the one that is really difficult to manage. That is.
Tanya, does this $2,000 include is it a one-time fee annually?
It's annual, right
We
now.
only have session every other year.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
So we only have session, 6 months out of the year, sometimes, depending on special sessions, so.
Yeah, Debbie?
The thing that I think might be worth looking at, whether or not, when many people have a chance to see the demo, you may decide it really, for all the reasons you're maybe thinking, Terry, it might not be the best idea. But I like it for the consideration of being able to mobilize lots of people across the state quicker. Not
Let's
just
look
the
at it.
legislative committee.
Yeah, that's a great point, because those of us working particular bills may know pretty quickly, as Terry said, but the rest of the state, that hopefully will be helping us at that point, may not. And this makes it automatic, is the way I understand it.
Mark, can we reword it so that the say-so ends up being with the, SRC rather than staff? If you have, like, whether or not we decide
Whether we go
if this is
forward.
worthy, or is that, are we leaving that word?
I would suggest if we,
March? Okay.
yeah, it's in March, that's really too late. If you wanna go down that route, it might be appropriate to put it before the officials committee.
Yeah,
That would be an easier thing to do.
yeah.
Just to kind of safeguard that, okay, RPT isn't buying something that we all ended up thinking that we don't,
Right.
it's not gonna be useful for us.
Right, yes, Gail's had her hand up, I think.
Would we, an amendment to the motion being appropriate to say exactly that instead of just referring it to them to make the decision, because that's what we've done. To change that now and say that it needs to go to them and a decision needs to be made by the officials committee by a certain time.
Before the session.
Well, maybe not before session, but
No,
back
before
to the end.
Before session.
Yeah, it certainly needs to be there. I don't know if we need to put the date in the motion, but certainly if you wanted to add the officials oversight.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
How many, we can track any bill, correct, regardless of whether it's live. So if I have any constituents in my district and say, hey, Chuck, what's going on with this one? I can send them an update. It's pretty effective, efficient for them, right?
And it's,
Yeah.
well, TLO, frankly, is one of the most transparent systems in the entire nation. I mean, we really have a good system in terms of transparency in Texas. But that said, it is not real time. And it doesn't push notifications out, and at least to my knowledge, we don't have a phone, iPad style app.
But that's what we're referring to, do all this, it'll notify you which ones you're tracking, which ones you're calling. But it's only, how many users is it?
On the administrative end of it, it's 3.
It's 3.
But on the mobile app,
It's unlimited, okay,
Yeah.
right.
Terry?
Move to amend.
Okay.
Subject to the approval of the officials committee, by December 31st.
Need a second?
Second.
Don't need it.
And keeping in mind, committee members, you can join the call if you're an SREC member and speak to the issue. Okay.
Okay, see if I've captured this. Subject to it would be as amended, read like this: subject to the approval of the officials committee by December 31st, we recommend the chair and staff, working with legislative priority committee, further investigate and fund the application, if found acceptable. Is that it? Okay, everybody know what we're voting on? We're voting on the amendment first to give officials committee oversight by December 31st. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no? Inside joke, sorry. Okay, we're back on the as amended language. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the as amended language as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Passes. Thank you, members.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am, quickly.
Is that going to necessitate a change to the budget tonight?
I do not believe so. That's my opinion. We'd have to talk to Kyle, but assuming that the proposed budget for 2019 passes, there is significant additional money in that budget related to all sorts of activities, including digital activities, and I would think it would probably fall under that. So, yeah, good question. Okay, we're a little bit behind, but we really have the pleasure now of welcoming 5 groups to give us a short update. I want you to be able to put a face before these names. You may have heard of these groups, you may have heard of some of the people, you may not actually know them. Yeah, Terry?
Mr. Chairman, we're doing 1:30.
Yes, sir.
Have we already done the reports from the committee heads?
We have not.
We move that we move that up on the agenda.
I second that.
We've got some of the external presentations have to be other places, and
So do we.
That's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I understand, but we will be having the opportunity in another week to hear those work group updates.
Fair enough, I withdraw.
Whereas we will not have the opportunity face to face. Okay, thank you. Okay, first we have, let me bump you down, Rachel, because I think people know you at this point. Let me go, is James here? James with TPPF. Yeah, give him a hand. Thank you so much for coming by on short notice.
My pleasure. It's
Yeah.
it's always good to get out and have a chance to talk about one of my favorite issues, taxpayer-funded lobbying. So let me start off with a short story. About 3 years ago, I ventured into the Senate Finance Committee to testify on a bill that I think is going to get ready to go during the next legislative session. It has to do with property tax, limiting property tax growth. And I walk into this particular Senate Finance Committee, and there are a horde of people, both inside the committee room as well as outside. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a good one. We have a lot of folks here who are angry about property taxes and feel just like me, right? And so as I venture into the committee room and find a seat, we have person after person after person after person after person come up and testify against property tax reform. And as it turns out, all of these folks are local elected officials. They are mayors, city council members, county commissioners, school board members. You go on down the list, every single one of them had some measure of authority at the local level. And they have been marshaled there by groups like the Texas Municipal League, and the Texas Association of Counties, and the Texas Association of School Boards, and all of these other various associations. To their credit, these groups got almost 200 local elected officials to come out that day and testify against myself, Peggy Venable, and 2 other people. We were 4 people against 200. And it was at that point that I much more intimately understood the need to address taxpayer-funded lobbying, right? And so over the last few years, what we've done at the Texas Public Policy Foundation is kind of a twofold push. One, we go for the ideal. I think the ideal is to ban the practice as a whole. No public money, government shouldn't use your tax dollars to lobby for bigger government and more power and authority. It's ridiculous, right? So our ultimate goal is to be able to get the legislature to agree and ban the practice as a whole. Now, we've gone with that a few sessions now, and I'll be honest, it's hard. In the House, it's hard to get traction on that particular bill. Fingers crossed. But in the meantime, while we're pushing that ban, I also think we're doing something a little smarter on the disclosure front, right? Because the way taxpayer-funded lobbying works is there's effectively 3 main avenues by which governmental entities lobby. One, they have intergovernmental relations people who work for them, right? And these are people who just act, it's their job to go out there and lobby, state officials and everybody else. So you have intergovernmental relation people that are brought on board and act at the behest of that entity. But you also have the governmental entity who is contracting out to Austin area lobbyists. In fact, Senator Burton last session had a really interesting point. She said that over 50% of every registered lobbyist in Austin works for some form of local government. That's an astronomical number. It's through the roof.
How many again?
Over 50%. And by the way, you can find that quote in the Watchdog. Over 50% of registered lobbyists in Texas represent some form of local government. It's an enormous amount of money and influence that exists for local governments, right? But there's also a third way, and that's the way that I alluded to a little bit earlier. Local governments oftentimes pay dues to associations who then go out and act as their third-party lobbyists. So you have these three avenues that virtually every local government participates in, and it's hard to figure out how much money is flowing into the system, right? So again, as a first step, I think some greater disclosure is needed, some sort of comprehensive database where we're saying, okay, City of Austin, this is all the ways that you're spending my money to lobby for more government. But there's also a second way, and Senator Burton pushed forward on this last time, where local expenditures for the purpose of lobbying have to be approved in a public meeting. I think that idea also has merit. So there's a lot of ways we're going to attack the problem. It's one of our top priorities for the next legislative session. I hope you guys will join us. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Give him a big hand. John Seago, did he come in? Yeah, there we go. John's in the back of the room.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Move that we keep the speaking time to 3 minutes.
Okay, we have a second. Well, we don't need it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 3 minutes, John.
3 minutes.
Sorry. My name's John Seago.
That's how much you get to testify in the legislative.
It's true. It's true. My name's John Seago. I serve as the legislative director for Texas Right to Life. We're passing around some materials for you. I want to highlight one of the legislative priorities on the pro-life issue. The priority just says PRENDA, and that's an acronym for the handout that's coming to you. It's the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. And this is a really important bill because it fixes a wrong that we currently have in Texas law. Texas law, a kind of dirty secret of the Texas legislature for the last 6 years has been when these pro-life laws come up for debate, moderate leadership in the House has demanded that they have this exception in there. And they have this exception that says we're going to apply this pro-life law to all children except those that might have a disability. That's the opposite of what we do in public policy usually. Usually we say if you have a disability, if you're not as healthy as everyone else, we give you more attention. We give you more access, more funding and protection. But this does the opposite. For example, we say no elective abortions after 20 weeks because those preborn children can feel pain. So what we say in Texas law is no elective abortions after 20 weeks unless the child is expected to have a disability. And then you can be aborted all the way up until birth. That's ridiculous. Texas, we like to say that we are the biggest and the baddest and the most pro-life state in the union, yet we have this unethical, this disgusting loophole throughout our law. PRENDA closes that loophole, and it also prohibits discriminatory abortions. This is really interesting, and this is where we're looking forward to the floor fight, because we have a lot of these new Democrats coming into the House they're all going to be fighting for that back mic to give their little speech about how progressive they are and how much they support abortion. But this bill says, do you support these types of abortions? Do you support abortion that is motivated by racism, by sexism, or discrimination against a disability? So we're putting, by saying no discriminatory abortions, if an abortion is motivated by the sex of the child, by the race of the child, or a potential disability of the child, that would be what's called a discriminatory abortion. Several states have passed these, and what we're doing is we're forcing the Democrats to defend all abortions, or we're saying, are there any abortions that you oppose? Would you oppose even aborting a child just because we found out it's a girl? Can we at least find some common ground that abortion, maybe the others are fine, but that type of abortion? But you and I know what they're going to do. They're going to double down. they can't afford to give an inch on this. That's why they defended partial birth abortion. That's why they defended dismemberment abortion. And that's the kind of thing we need to do, especially leading up to this next election in 2 years, to make a distinction between what it means to be pro-life and what it means to be pro-abortion. And so that's what Prenda does. It also affirms life-affirming options and says Texas has more to offer these families that find out that children have disabilities. And you can find more information on that. If you want to sign up for our updates, there was a sign-up sheet going around, and I also have a full agenda summary if you're interested in that of the other pro-life bills.
Yeah, if you can send that to me, we'll get it out to the rest of the committee.
I don't know, I'm going over time, but I got a question.
We're really out of...
sunset on funding Planned Parenthood?
There's the second on here, the defunding bill is what we're working on to put that into law, so it's permanent. It doesn't have to be reaffirmed every budget.
Okay, give John a big hand. Next up is Paul Hodson with the Convention of States group.
All right, well, thank you all very much. I want to be mindful of your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark. And I'm going to update you on a few things that happened since we were here in April, and answer the question about coalitions and auxiliaries. I feel like I'm in front of a congressional committee, because I've got to say, on the advice of counsel, no, we are not permitted to be an auxiliary or even a coalition. However, one of the things we like to offer is we don't look at obstacles. What can we do? And we think we can actually offer basically the same thing. We just can't have that official relationship with the RPT. A couple things that have changed. Me, I'm a glutton for punishment. You guys went to one state convention. I went to 5 state conventions this year, and I can tell you, thank God I live in Texas, because as much struggle sometimes as you think you might have here, it's way better here than in most other states. So thank God for the Republican Party and the grassroots who are really working here. And that's what we're about, is the grassroots. November 6th happened, obviously, right? And we found out there's discouragement amongst a lot of liberty groups. So what we're working on is coalescing, building a big coalition. What we can offer is firepower. 165,000 of us across the state. You talk about getting a message out. You get it to us, we can distribute that right away to our grassroots. House District 100, Eric Johnson, right? We've got several hundred supporters. That's our low level, right? When we're talking about high level, we're talking about House District 73 with Kyle Biederman. We're talking 2,500 people who are on our list that we can get a message to right away. Priorities, we're going to be looking at those. Let me introduce, by the way, I'm a regional director now, which means I work with other states. I was state director here. Shelby Williams is our state director, so you'll be working directly with him. You'll be working very much with Michael Defendahl, who is our legislative liaison. He's in San Antonio, so he's pretty close to Austin, being able to come up here a lot. We're going to try and be at the Capitol to help you all on legislative priorities, particularly property tax relief. I really like to use the word relief because that reform can be misconstrued by so many people. And constitutional carry. Our folks have said that of your list of priorities, those are 2 that we really want to help with. There's other things we certainly want to help with pro-life legislation. We got 165,000 people. There's plenty for everybody to do. I'm going to leave it at that. So
I would encourage you to make sure your director goes ahead and joins our staff page where he can get that information and disseminate it as he sees fit.
Perfect. Yes, perfect. And we appreciate that work that was done on the staff page. That's super informative to our folks. So appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Thank you all.
Fantastic. Thank you. And
yeah, I know how to.
And while Nicole is coming up with Texas values, where'd Nicole? There she is. I would say that Convention of States, my perspective when I was working in the Capitol, is that they were singularly the most organized, most effective at getting people to show up at meetings and making phone calls and things of that sort, including on very short notice. So it's a real godsend that they're going to be helping us out on some of this. Thank you for the time. Yeah, no, you bet. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Nicole Hudgens, and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for Texas Values. We're the largest statewide organization focusing on faith, family, and freedom. And a special thanks to this committee for passing religious freedom and privacy protections as a priority. We are here as a resource. There's a handout going out by our new policy advisor, Mary Elizabeth. My contact information, including my cell phone, is there. Please don't make that public. But y'all, I want y'all to have it because we will
This is being streamed.
we will be on call and at the Capitol every single day working on those issues. Within the handout that's coming out, we're talking about the religious freedom issues and privacy. I want to let you know that right now the Department of Education is doing an investigation because a kindergarten girl was sexually assaulted in her bathroom in the state of Georgia because the school district enacted sexual orientation, gender identity policies. This isn't just happening in Georgia. Our office is still getting phone calls where there have been privacy violations, and we know for a fact there are more and more school districts that are using these policies to violate privacy. In addition, Jack Phillips, the famous cake baker, who simply declined to create a cake for a same-sex wedding, is going back to court because after the Colorado Commission on Civil Rights punished him for his religious beliefs on marriage, he received a phone call from someone who asked him to design a gender transition cake. And that same commission that the U.S. Supreme Court said, hey, quit punishing this gentleman for his religious beliefs, is now having to go back to court because that same commission is going after him again. There's a cake baker in Texas who was asked to do a wedding cake for a same-sex ceremony. She declined. She provided other cake bakers that the couple could use, and she had to obtain not only legal counsel, but her son was threatened horrifically simply because they declined to be involved with something that went against their sincerely held religious beliefs. So this is still happening in the state of Texas. We know we have the support on this issue. Certainly having a GOP priority is so important, but if you look back at what happened in the primary, where over 90% of Texans voted to protect privacy, it ranked even higher than repealing Obamacare, y'all. And even in Travis County, it was about 75% in favor of that. We have the support we need, but government belongs to those who show up. So I highly encourage this committee to, one, find out the background of this information. That's what we're here for. Go to our website, call my cell phone. I will give you plenty of background information in addition to what's being handed out. But we need y'all to show up, and we need you to be asking those in your communities, how are your religious freedoms being protected? Is your city council passing sexual orientation, gender identity policies at your school district or in your city council? Because the way these things are written, it might say, oh, well, religious beliefs are protected, you know, if you're a church. But the First Amendment says we should be able to exercise our religious beliefs, all right? So it's important that you're aware of what's happening and that those stories come to the light. The left is really good at telling stories in those committee hearings. Our side needs to be telling our stories and speaking up and coming to the Capitol in numbers. So the biggest thing I can ask from you is, one, find out the stories and find out the background information. And we need as many people as at the Capitol as possible who are willing to talk about this issue. There are some key ways to message. Please contact me. We work with a number of national groups on these issues. Attorneys, we've got a fantastic coalition working on these issues, but the fact that y'all can be there and speak up and push these issues is going to be key in getting us success and protecting religious freedom and privacy in Texas. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you.
Tell Jonathan hi.
As Rachel's coming up, again, I can't say enough about some of these groups. They're really there every single day, walking the halls. We may not be there every day, but we can certainly get a lot of advice and information and talking points. Nicole mentioned the anecdotal kind of stories. If you go to these hearings, some of the more riveting testimony is where somebody has had a personal thing happen to them or their family members. And so if you know people like that on whatever issue you're dealing with, try to get them personally to the committee hearing. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, 3 more minutes. We don't start the next round of committee meetings until 1:45. But if anybody needs to leave at this point, I certainly understand. Rachel?
Okay, I'm gonna give my time to a working group, so I think that's more important, but I just wanna say 2 things. I'm passing out a handout. I'll be around if you have any questions. Yeah, that's what that is. I don't have them stapled, but it's 3 pages and they're collated. The other thing is I've typed out the storyboard that's already been put out on the Signal group, but the bit.ly link is bit.ly/story86, and I will write that up on the board for you too. And I'll speak my time to a working group.
Thank you, Rachel.
I put it on the Signal group, guys.
Great. So you got somebody else you're gonna talk to, or?
I want the working groups to be able to report. I'm giving it
Okay,
myself.
great. Okay, I misunderstood. Okay, with that, have a short report, and thank Rachel too. I mean, I don't want to omit Rachel. She's been a big part of all this. Give her a big hand. Okay, first on the list is Tanya, Terry, Leo, and Debbie Terry. One of y'all or multiple ones want to give a short update? We do want to keep these short.
Yeah, actually, what Terry held up a while ago, what Debbie held up a while ago is the religious liberties report.
Okay, that was passed out and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, there was only 2 bills filed by Republicans that we would even think about supporting, but they didn't really. We haven't had that discussion whether it would mesh with our priorities.
Okay. Okay.
Still early.
Okay, let's go to the second group. Terry Holcomb and Roy Morales.
Yeah, property tax, Representative Murray filed a bill, Steve Toth, we've got the bill back from Legend Council. He's supposed to have filed it this week, he hasn't yet. We had the Senate Select Committee hearing. The other day I was able to speak with Senator Creighton and Steve Toth, and I connected those two. We're fairly sure either Creighton or Becky Fort is probably going to pick up this bill along with Senator Flores, along with Senator Paxton, hopefully. So it looks like we may actually have 3 or 4 senators in the House that are going to carry this bill. It's a big deal. I have a meeting scheduled next week with Chairman Nickey, Tanya, Mark, and with the presumptive Speaker Bonin specifically on property taxes still funding. That's my vote.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Roy, did you want to add something to that?
No.
Okay, Susan, Ashley, or James?
Actually, my report was exactly what Mr. Seago presented as a part of the Brenda Act, and that he has already done a lot of the legwork on. Thank you very much. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he gave us this wonderful handout. So it's basically a repeat of exactly what I needed. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's see, Gail. Yes,
On
ma'am.
the abolition, we're expecting to see bills to be filed. I'm still waiting back to see if there's been any message changes, or we can expect a filing date, but.
Has it been drafted?
Abolition.
Has it been drafted and ready to go?
Yeah, it's already done.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Gail and/or Tom, and
I don't have what's been filed. I spent my time looking back to see who had filed things before, and one of the major people was Connie Gartman, and we lost her. So we've got to be seeking someone who can some of this on the taxpayer funded lobbying and the union due pay. So I made a list of the bills that have been filed in the last 2 sessions and the legislators that filed them, and we will be contacting them to see if we can look at what's already been filed.
okay, thank you, Gail.
Also, I have information articles that Empower Texas have done, and I've been working with James Quintero, and we'll be continuing working with them. If you know of any other groups that want to participate in this research, I would love to hear from you.
Let me add one little quick thing on the taxpayer-funded lobbying that even TPPF didn't mention, and that is that some of these lobbyists, and I'm talking about the paid Austin, Travis County lobbyists, if you will, some of those lobbyists can take that taxpayer money that may have come from an ISD or a county or a city or whomever, And they can do a couple of things with that. One is they can turn around and take some of that money once it goes kind of through the filter, if you will, of their company here in Travis County, and then turn around and make campaign contributions to elected officials. And so, yes, and so there could be some things going on there that probably most people in this room and listening to the stream would be very opposed to. What was I going to say on the other part of it? I forgot. I'll come back to it later. Let's see. The next on the list we have. Oh, I know what it was. When we're talking about whether it's property tax or pro-life or anything, we don't want to exclude the Democrats. There are some Democrats that are sympathetic with us on some issues. And if we can put the mantra of being a bipartisan effort on some of these, that goes a very long way. If you look through the Texas Democrat platform, there's actually a number of things in the Texas Democrat platform that they agree with us, in some cases almost word for word with what's in our platform. And so at that point, there's no real reason for the legislature not to do this other than the effect of these lobbying groups that are oftentimes being paid by taxpayer money. Okay?
Quick
Yes,
question.
sir. Yes, sir.
I was told by a Democrat precinct chair the other day that there is a conservative Democrat caucus. Are you aware of that?
No, it was not.
There's only 10 of them, but you know, it's still 10.
Hey, we'll take it. Yeah, okay. Okay, good to know.
Do you have their names, Roy?
I'm gonna try to get them.
John, didn't you say you thought we actually picked up some pro-life Democrats on the House side?
Yep. Yep. We have, right now we have about 6.
Okay, so it was only 4 or 5 last time, right? Or something like that?
Right. We're still testing them out.
Okay, good, thank y'all. Walter West couldn't make it. He was trying to protect the border, I believe. Is anybody here actually designated to speak on his behalf? If not, I'll give you the 5-second big update on constitutional carry that he told me last night, and that is that he has a large amount of law enforcement agency support for constitutional carry. And I know that's kind of one of these things that's a big sticking point with a lot of the legislators, is if they don't want it, they will say, well, law enforcement doesn't want it, and we need to listen to them. And I think we even have some SREC members that might be in that category. But at least from what Walter reported last night, he has significant law enforcement agency support for constitutional carry. Let's see, we have one other quick item of business before I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And that is, it's been suggested, I think the Saturday morning calls worked pretty well, but it's also been suggested we could try Friday during the day, like lunch hour. And so I'm going to throw it out to the committee to vote for either Friday, December 6th or Saturday, December 7th, a day that lives in infamy, for our next conference call. Any discussion? Okay, who votes for Friday the 6th sometime around lunch? Can you vote for both? Let's just pick one or the other, and we'll go with whatever has the most votes. All in favor of Friday, December 6th around lunch, please raise your hand. Got 5. Who vote? 6. Okay. Who votes for Saturday, December the 7th, like we've done the last couple of times? It'll be around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning.
I can go either way.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
If a conflict is going to stop someone from coming, Mark, I'll go either way.
I can't do Friday.
You can't do Friday? Okay, if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and do it on Saturday morning then. Okay, like it's been working pretty well. Okay, I thank y'all for your time.
Somebody commented about the meeting, the next meeting, the spring meeting. Looks like Brandon's scheduling it sometime in February.
Okay, well, that'll help.
Maybe early to mid-February.
Okay, well, that'll help. That's good to know. That'll help. Okay. Do you have a motion to adjourn? So moved, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, members.
Comments that you made about them being able to use these contributions to the lobbyists to be able to go back to the funds and things. And we should have so that they will be worried about the same things happening. The Republican Party. We can't take that from the lobbyists, so that they should be afraid, just like we are.
It's actually really good.
Yeah, I've seen several.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, and sometimes you're an
Well, I know, once you said, like, I'm not,
So that's where we have a challenge.